What's up, my comic comrades? The first episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law dropped this morning on Disney+, bringing with it the MCU debut of Jennifer Walters, as well as the return of Bruce Banner Hulk, Abomination, Daredevil, and Wong. The show will also give us the MCU debut of villain Titania and likely a number of additional surprises. But over the next few episodes, we're going to focus on the first three characters. Starting today with a complete look at the Marvel history of She-Hulk to get you familiar with the character's origin before seeing her in live action. And if you like the content we're putting out for all of you, you can return some love back this way by hitting the thumbs up button on this video, sharing with your friends, and dropping a comment down below. Those are small, simple things, but they are the best way to help us kick YouTube's algorithm right in the booty. You know, so it works for us and not against us. Now let's dive into the history of Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. She-Hulk was created by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and first appeared in the Savage She-Hulk issue 1 in February of 1980. But while Stan Lee is credited for the co-creation of She-Hulk, the character wasn't originally his idea. In fact, the only reason She-Hulk was created in the first place was to gain exclusive rights to a female Hulk character. You see, the idea was born as the 1970s live-action Incredible Hulk TV series was airing. The show was so successful that the CBS network was thinking about making a female Hulk spin-off series, and if CBS did that, they would own the rights to a female Hulk character. Well, Marvel heard whispers of this idea and knew they could pump out a comic way quicker than CBS could put out a TV series. So Stan got to work and wrote issue 1 of the Savage She-Hulk with John Buscema as the artist. And that is the untold real-world origin of She-Hulk. Now let's check out the character's comic book fictional origin. She-Hulk's origin is given to us in the previously mentioned Savage She-Hulk issue 1, where we meet Jennifer Walters, a talented criminal lawyer and the woman who would become She-Hulk. She's actually the cousin of Bruce Banner, with her father being Bruce's uncle, a local sheriff, Maurice Walters. She's 5 years younger than her cousin Bruce, but the two grew up together and were very, very close. A fact that became evident early on in her first appearance when on the second page of the issue, Bruce visits his cousin at her law firm, and she immediately notices something's wrong with Bruce. Bruce says, "I don't know how to tell you," and she responds with, "Don't you remember? We were almost like brother and sister. We told each other everything." Bruce explains, "The police are after me, the army, sometimes I think the whole human race." He then proceeds to tell her his origin, how he became the Incredible Hulk. After which Jennifer stares in shock, asking, "You really mean it? You really are the green-skinned monster? But how?" Bruce answers, "A chemical change comes over me. I can't control it. I can't cure it. I can't help it. Sometimes, Jen, I think I'm going mad. I'm sorry. I have no right to lay this on you." But Jen just starts gathering her things, telling him, "Don't say that, Doc. I want you to come home with me. There must be an answer." As they're headed to Jennifer's car, we see they're being watched by two men who follow Bruce and Jen back to her house. We learn that the men work for Nick Trask, who was an enemy of Jennifer's father and one of her clients. Jennifer had to put out a rumor that she possessed incriminating information on Trask, attempting to get Trask to sabotage himself. But instead, he sent his men to silence her. So as soon as she got out of the car, one of the men jumped out and shot her. Bruce rushed in to save her using a water hose to spray the guy, forcing him back into his car as if it was a fire hose. The guys then decide they've drawn too much attention and drive off. Anyway, Bruce picks up Jennifer and rushes her inside, only to realize that his cousin needs an immediate blood transfusion as she'd already lost too much blood and didn't have enough time to get her to the hospital. So he rushes her to the doctor's house across the street, and when he sees that nobody was home, he breaks in and uses their equipment to do the blood transfusion himself, since he and Jen share the same blood type. However, in the heat of the moment, he completely forgot that his blood is gamma radiated and could have drastic side effects. After he finishes the blood transfusion, Jennifer wakes up and Bruce calls 911 to get her to the hospital. At the hospital, however, Trask's men disguise themselves as doctors and try to chloroform her, which obviously puts Jennifer in extreme distress and triggers her now gamma radiated blood. Her skin turns green and she transforms into the She-Hulk for the first time, knocking all three men back so hard they crack the wall. One of the now terrified goons tries to shoot her, but She-Hulk blocks it by picking up her hospital bed and throwing it at them. This causes them to run for their lives towards the elevator, but she just rips the elevator doors open, pulls the elevator up by the cables, and tears the roof off said elevator, chasing them out of the hospital and into the street. They're able to get into their car, but She-Hulk rips a traffic light pole out of the ground and throws it at their car, knocking all the tires off. At which point she runs over to the car and pulls them out to give them to the police. Now that gives us She-Hulk's comic book origin, but what about her story arcs? Well, we're gonna highlight some of her most iconic stories she's been a part of over her 42 years in comics, which is one of the things those of us who are comic collectors keep a close eye on whenever a comic character makes the leap onto the big or small screen, because it can really increase the value of certain key characters where that character plays a significant role or center role. This is why it's crazy important to keep your collection organized, so you know which issues you have, which issues you need, and generally what the value of those issues are. In fact, we're very excited to have Overstreet Access as today's sponsor because they have recently launched a brand new community-driven platform to help collectors do exactly that and much more. And you can check it out for yourself by going to overstreetaccesslaunch.com or by clicking our link in the description. The name Overstreet should sound extremely familiar to my fellow comic collectors, and that's because Overstreet Access is a creation of the publishers of the well-known Overstreet Comic Price Guide, which has been a trusted resource for collectors for 52 years. And they've now expanded their widely used and trusted price guide into a digital platform that not only allows you to get up-to-date price guide values for your comics, but also adds incredible collection management tools that take your collection to the next level. This includes the ability to create a digital library of your personal collection by leveraging Overstreet's massive comic database and filtering your searches for issues by story arc, character, or publisher. There's also tools like their amazing Gap List feature that allows you to quickly identify missing issues in your collection, and even connect with comic retailers who can help you add the missing issues. Which brings us to our favorite aspect of Overstreet Access and the platform they're building. It's created and being developed by an amazing team of people who are fans and collectors themselves and really want the platform to be a community experience. So being created by collectors for collectors, they've designed and structured Overstreet Access to be a synergistic resource for every player in the comic book collector ecosystem, from the individual collector to the local comic shop. We're already members here at Variant, and I'm telling you, if you're a comic collector on any level, you want to jump on now. Just head over to overstreetaccesslaunch.com or click the link in the description and choose which tools and features you want between the bronze, silver, and gold member options. We recommend the silver or gold level, which also gives you access to the Overstreet Access app. Either way, jump on and start building your collection now and let us know which feature is your favorite. As we just went over, everything started for She-Hulk in the Savage She-Hulk title, giving us She-Hulk's origin in issue 1. Initially, her transformation was triggered by rage, much like her cousin Bruce, but as the series progressed, she learned to control her transformation. Specifically in Savage She-Hulk issue 12, when Michael Morbius cures her of a lethal blood disease. As a show of gratitude, she agreed to defend Morbius in court. He was set to stand trial for his murders as a vampire, but she's such a good lawyer, she was able to successfully argue that his medical condition should not be taken into account, and his charges were reduced to involuntary manslaughter. But now being able to control her transformation, Jennifer eventually decided to become the She-Hulk permanently, seeing it as just an upgraded version of herself. This led her on a series of typical superhero adventures and ultimately a team spot on the Avengers, as most Marvel superheroes tend to do at one point or another. As an Avenger, we later see her play a role in the Secret Wars storyline as one of the several heroes transported to Battleworld by the Beyonder. As a matter of fact, we actually go through both Secret Wars stories in this recent episode right here, so check it out. Regardless, the events of the Secret War story led to Ben Grimm, the Thing on the Fantastic Four, choosing to stay on Battleworld for a year after the battle was won, when he discovered that the planet allowed him to change into his human form at will. So he wanted to explore that ability and sort out who he really was. This opened the door for She-Hulk to join the Fantastic Four, and led to one of her most iconic stints in comics as the temporary fourth member of the Fantastic Four. During her time with the team, she would become romantically involved with an ally of the Fantastic Four named Wyatt Wingfoot. I'm not going to elaborate any further on that, I just really wanted you all to know that there's a Marvel character named Wyatt Wingfoot. It was also during her time with the Fantastic Four that She-Hulk was exposed to radiation and lost her ability to transform back into her human form, which I suppose wasn't really a big deal considering she liked her She-Hulk form better anyway. However, Reed Richards later discovered that it actually wasn't the radiation exposure that kept her from changing into Jennifer Walters, but rather a mental block in Jennifer's head. So it turned out she liked being She-Hulk even more than originally thought. From here, we have the sensational She-Hulk title, which lasted for a total of 60 issues. The series follows Jennifer after her time with the Fantastic Four and showing her rejoin the Avengers for a bit. She would, however, get hypnotized by a character named the Ringmaster and get manipulated into becoming a circus performer. Yes, a circus performer. Issue 1 even opens up with panels of her lifting elephants. But one of the standout things for this series is in issue 15 of the sensational She-Hulk, where Marvel introduced a gray version of She-Hulk that would appear only at night and had the mind of a child. Gray She-Hulk even speaks in third person, going as far to call Jennifer Walters Puny Jennifer, mirroring how the Gray Savage Hulk spoke in his first appearance. For those of you unfamiliar with the story around the first Gray Hulk, the Incredible Hulk as a character was originally meant to be gray, but technical inking issues forced Marvel to change the color to green. As for She-Hulk's time in the gray, it didn't last long and was really more of an homage more than anything. So she returned to her normal green color in issue 17. After this, She-Hulk took on some legal work for Heroes for Hire and started dating Luke Cage. She also rejoined the Avengers yet again and even made an appearance in the JLA Avengers crossover series where she was brainwashed by Starro and started fighting fighting the Avengers. She was eventually freed and went on to help the Avengers hunt down the 12 artifacts they needed to defeat the DC villain Krona, and fight Surtur in the final battle alongside Wonder Woman. We actually did an entire episode on the JLA Avengers crossover, which you could find right here. As for more modern iterations, there's the 2004 Dan Slott She-Hulk series, which seems to be where Marvel Studios is pulling a lot of their inspiration from for the Disney Plus series, at least based on the trailers and footage we've seen so far. Anyway, when Dan Slott started working on She-Hulk, he decided he wanted to take the character in a new direction. So instead of focusing on the character's superhero adventures, he explored more of her personal life and career as an attorney. That included her life as a superhero in New York and the relationship dynamic with her cousin Bruce, as he hates being the Hulk while Jennifer loves it. Just right there you could see the similarities to the tone of the show. Then in 2005, Dan Slott would create a follow-up series that continued the focus on Jennifer's life as a criminal lawyer, which really didn't happen much before Dan Slott took over She-Hulk. Slott also injected a lot more comedy in the 2005 She-Hulk series than the character has shown before, creating a more fun, lighthearted version of She-Hulk as we see her trying to balance her life with her fiancé while defending fellow heroes in court, one of which is Hawkeye. Another more recent She-Hulk comic is Immortal She-Hulk in 2020. This one-shot comic by Al Ewing explores every single time She-Hulk has died and come back to life, and the mental struggle Jennifer is going through due to her immortality. It's actually a solid story with cameos from fan favorites like Thor and Wolverine, even if it was more meant to capitalize on the success of the Immortal Hulk title and bring She-Hulk up to speed. Finally, this brings us to the most current iteration of She-Hulk in her new 2022 6-issue miniseries, which brings her back to basics of Dan Slott's version of the character. Jennifer is trying to rebuild her law career, reconnect with friends, fight bad guys, and even explore her love life. So if you're interested in She-Hulk's character, you should definitely jump on this title. But now that we're caught up with story arcs, let's get into powers and abilities. She-Hulk's powers are of course very similar to Bruce Banner Hulk's. She's just not nearly as strong since her gamma exposure was secondhand through Banner's blood. However, this led to one of the biggest differences between She-Hulk and the Hulk, in that Jennifer is able to control her transformation into She-Hulk and maintain her intelligence instead of it being reduced and altered by rage like Banner's Hulk. With that said, there have been instances where she lost the ability to transform at will, like the mental block I mentioned earlier, leaving her stuck as either She-Hulk or Jennifer Walters. As for her strength level, it's been shown that her base strength is slightly weaker than the Thing's, but that's been interchanged depending on who's writing her at the time. And originally, She-Hulk's strength had a set limit on how strong the character could be. It didn't increase with her rage like the Hulk, but as time went on, that was changed too, so her rage could increase her strength similar to her cousin. Besides superhuman strength, Jennifer Walters is also a very competent hand-to-hand fighter, having been personally trained by Captain America. She's also extremely intelligent, of course, being a highly gifted criminal defense lawyer and one of the go-to lawyers for superheroes alongside Matt Murdock, better known as Daredevil. She even practices law in She-Hulk form, as we've seen from the She-Hulk Attorney at Law trailers. As for her personality, she was first introduced as the Savage She-Hulk, but in the more modern era, she becomes more of a kind-hearted, sweet person, not really getting too angry in fights and actually joking around a bit. Another funny aspect of the character is that for a time, She-Hulk would regularly break the fourth wall, doing it before Deadpool. She was so aware she was in a comic, she would do stuff like talk to the reader and even get into arguments with the writers of the comic. It was pretty dang funny. Her breaking the fourth wall was later tamed quite a bit, but it's a pretty memorable aspect of the character, at least for me. Anyway, let's get you guys some reading recommendations. Check out She-Hulk 2 Superhuman Law, Essential Savage She-Hulk Volume 1, She-Hulk Omnibus 1, She-Hulk Volume 1 Law and Disorder, and She-Hulk by Soul, the complete collection. That should be enough to get you all started. First up for the week of August 17th, we have the Hulk issue 8. In the final installment of the epic crossover between the Hulk and Thor series, Marvel's two heaviest hitters expend their rage on one final brutal brawl that will answer once and for all which of these heroes is the strongest. Now we have Daredevil issue 2. After Devil's Reign, everything for Daredevil is changing, and the same thing for Elektra, with her new role of the Woman Without Fear. Daredevil is more ambitious than ever. Here we have Gunslinger Spawn issue 11. Gunslinger's realization that his enemies have ended up in the future alongside him sets him up on a new path. The hunt is on, and he's bringing hell with him. Fourth on the list is Black Adam issue 3. The last issue gave us White Adam, so I'm very curious to see where this goes, especially since Black Adam is dying. And finally, we have Flash issue 785. Just when the speedsters seem to have snapped Barry out of Pariah's clutches, Wallace seems to be falling in. And the creator of Barry's mind prison isn't about to let the team of speedsters just run off. And that's gonna bring today's episode to a close, but if you enjoyed this episode, check that one out right here. And if you like all the content, subscribe, like, and comment. It helps us out. But other than that, I will see you next time when I talk about all things comics.